1. The Tale of Misfit Boots. This begins in my sophomore year of high school, but will come back to haunt me years later. I call him Misfit Boots after his obsession with the band, and a pair of boots that looked like he's stolen them from the corpse of an 80s rock star. Let's take you back to sophomore year. I am a chubby 15-year-old girl with torn jeans, so much black eyeliner, and a ripped-up black hoodie. I would anxiously chew on sleeves. A few important details about me are that I have learning disabilities and also suffered severe trauma as a child that really stunted my emotional growth. I have complex PTSD and at this point was very easily triggered to tears and flashbacks, crying on the hallway floor outside of class, then going back to class to forcibly finish my work. Misfit Boots was a large, lumbering kid. His greasy, oil-slicked hair was shaved on one side and dyed electric green. He was a new student in my grade from Michigan. This guy was well known for his sexist, racist, and even Nazi-related jokes. He was and is a disgusting person, both inside and out. Misfit Boots and I were in the same special math class, and lucky me, he situated himself right next to me. I could have moved, if I weren't a stubborn little bastard. His favorite outfit was a gross brown hoodie and jeans. He wore it so frequently that I wondered if he even bothered to wash it. At this point, in our teenhood, he had yet to grow a neckbeard. Were he not friends? He grew one in college. He didn't have the patented neckbeard smell, but instead, I would choke on his Axe body spray. I spent the math class struggling to understand the very concept of statistics, where he spent the class making off-color offensive jokes. Sure, I was a rabid emo kid who would slap a kid for touching my stuff. Shout out to my best friend of 10 years for holding me back. But with my neckbeard looming over me, self-preservation kicked in. I politely smiled and gave him short answers. I hoped that with the obvious disinterest, he would take the hint, but of course, that wasn't the case. Would I be here if he had? He asked for my kick many times. After a few weeks of badgering, I gave it to him. What a moron, right? It started out fine, him telling me about where he was from, and that was okay. I was polite and began to semi-warm up to him. If I squinted really hard and pretended I didn't hear the awful jokes, I could deal with him. Very quickly, things began to escalate. In class, he would tell me about his life in Michigan. Apparently, he was addicted to heroin at the ripe old age of 14 and suffered from an overdose. As a 21-year-old woman, I can now see that he was very likely lying. I never saw track marks or any signs of past addiction. Around this time, Misfit Boots had asked me out twice. The first time, I bitched out and said, maybe, despite having no intention of dating him. Then he asked again, so I said, I'm sorry, I'm not in a good place mentally. I don't think I should be dating. I need to focus on my mental health. He asked, what was wrong with me? I told him I was depressed, which was true. I was suicidal and hurting myself, and being the gentleman he is, he told me that if I would just date him, I wouldn't be depressed. He told me how well he'd treat me, and he just needed one chance. I stayed firm in my answer. One of the most memorable moments occurred in that very math class. He came in, jaw clenched, and fists balled up. For some reason, I think my mind repressed certain parts of this. He was explaining to me that his previous girlfriend had been pregnant but aborted the baby. He was aggressive and vengeful, and he texted her paragraphs of hate messages. I wanted to make him feel better, to de-escalate the situation. I'm very sensitive to men acting aggressively. I confided in him that I had been pregnant at 14. I used to cope with my sexual trauma using hypersexuality, and I had a miscarriage. I can't remember what he yelled at me, but it was enough to leave me sobbing on the floor. He didn't even know he'd done it, I think, because I remember him bending down asking, "What's wrong?" I went home, and within a few days he asked me out again. This time I said, "Abso-motherfucking-libly not." He told me it was fine, and that he was just going to get wasted and pretend I never loved you. And that was the first 2 months of knowing Misfit Boots. 2. I'm neckbeard bait. Apparently. I'm a 17-year-old female-to-male trans man, but due to family complications I present female. No binders or anything. Just really short hair. I'm also a cosplayer. I've been cosplaying since I was 13 and going to conventions as often as I can. I cosplay women and men, and I've been targeted by neckbeards and nice guys in every single one of my cosplays. I'm going to just compile a bunch of my neckbeard stories into one big master post, cause why not? The first story is from before I was a cosplayer. 6th grade, I know. Yes, I still know him. This boy we'll call Andy has always been short, chubby, and greasy. Never really smelly, but definitely greasy. Andy has always been a manipulator. He manipulated most of my female friends into dating him from grades 6 to 8 before we all wisened up. This past year, when school was still in, he asked me out at least 7 times. I can't remember how many in person and over text. It was creepy. He'd ask me out at lunch when I was with my friends. He'd ask me out at 3 a.m. when he knew I had work the next day, then get angry when I didn't respond. He was just generally obsessed. He continued to be manipulative as well. He'd appeal to my interests, as he did with the other girls in my friend group. He'd learn who our favorite characters were from anything, and he'd copy them completely, trying to get us to fall for him. And while this worked in 7th grade with 3 of my friends who were very into Undertale, he's short, chubby, and makes puns, it wouldn't work with me, an almost 17-year-old and openly gay/trans man who isn't scared of anything but his mom. But oh boy did he try, and he still is. He brags about how much intimacy, I really don't like talking about his intimate life, so I'm just going to use that word, he has with women. And he loved to explain in graphic detail how he lost his, in the room next to his parents' room. Then he'd make me feel bad about myself for never even having been on a date and telling me he could give me my first kiss and stuff like that. It still happens sometimes, but I've learned what a block user button is. Story 2 is from my 4th convention. I don't feel like any of the others deserved a story except for this one, and my most recent one. On to the story. I did a group cosplay of My Hero Academia, when it was super big. We did gender-bent versions of the 4 boys, Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Kirishima. I was Bakugo. We wore the little orange cheer outfits from that one episode, and since my ex-friend does professional cheer, we made an actual routine. At Wymir, that's WYMIR _cos, COS, on Insta if you want to see some pictures, as well as other cosplays I do. These outfits are a bit on the skimpier side. Mind you, we were all 15 at the time. I am quite well endowed in certain places, if that's what you'd call my curse. So I was approached a lot outside of our group. A lot of people really seemed to like the concept of a busty gender-bent boy with anger issues, taking pictures pretending to beat them up. One particular pair tend to live in my mind rent-free without consent. 2 larger men in dollar store Dragon Ball Z, I'm assuming cosplays, approached me in my group and asked for pictures with Bakugo. Never mind that we had a whole theme going on. The heavier of the 2 lads wanted way more pictures than what I was comfortable with. He kept asking for pictures with me pretending to choke him, pretending to punch him, pretending to kiss him on the cheek. Then his thinner and taller friend would ask my friend to take pictures with all 3 of us posing together, like we 3 were a big couple. Not saying that being in a poly relationship is bad, because I myself am poly. And oh lord, the smells that came from those 2. It was almost acidic. It was all around super creepy and gross, and the only way I was able to get out of it was my friend, who's 6'2", well-built and cosplays with big weapons, told them that we were leaving. Bless his big dumb heart. He's got rocks in his brain, but if he isn't one of the most protective and nice guys I've ever met. And that's that for that Neckbeard story. Still creeps me out. My 3rd Neckbeard story is from my most recent convention. The very first and very last, I'm assuming, from this year. R.I.P. I went with friends again, and I was cosplaying Season 1 Robin from Young Justice, a show I hold dear to me from when I was very little. It was a homemade cosplay that I made with my grandma from scratch, so it's one of my personal favorites just because of how much love and work went into it. But unfortunately, it's a bit of a harder cosplay for me to wear because it is skin tight, and my dysphoria has been getting worse and worse over the years. One neckbeard at this convention decided that it would be appropriate to touch me without consent while in this cosplay. I was taking pictures with a younger boy dressed as Batman, think 12 or 13 years old, with his dad who was dressed like the Joker. It was a very wholesome and cute interaction. I was just finishing up taking pictures with this adorable little boy. I say little like I'm not even 10 years older, when I feel someone grab my arm. When I turn around to face whoever it is, it's this heavier-set man in Joker makeup, demanding I finish talking with this boy and his dad to take pictures with him. I of course thought it was super rude and told him that I had to finish taking pictures with this family first. But the dad and son were too nice and said that they were done, thanked me, and left. This Joker wannabe started lecturing me on DC lore and everything about Dick Grayson and his past. Honestly more of a Marvel fan, but I hold young Justice very close to me, and got way too close for comfort to take pictures. Then, to make matters worse, started quoting the Joker non-stop and demanding I fight him, and "Where's your bat, little bird?" It was uncomfortable, and I just tried to laugh most of it off, until this very professional Batman walked up to me and asked me where I had been and that the group was waiting for us. I was super relieved and just went back with him to his friends, who were all very professional too, like $1,000 cosplays. I ended up hanging out with these older men for a while until my asshole friends, who ditched me all weekend, decided that they needed something from me because I knew the area better than all of them. I honestly miss those older guys. Better friends than any I've ever had. My fourth and final neckbeard encounter would probably be a legbeard, actually. I met her and her sister through an anime group on Facebook, even though I don't use it now and I'm way less into anime. This legbeard actually lives on my street, but we didn't figure that out until about a week in. I'll call her Sam for now. She had an older sister as well, who was kind of normal. Sam is obsessed with Naruto, and both of them are homeschooled. Sam was my sister's rival in the babysitting and pet-sitting industry in our small neighborhood for years before, but I had no idea. Sam had tried to tell us that our pets, mainly my cat, my baby boy, my precious son, would be happier with her, even though he made it very clear that he did not like her, and often she tried to steal our puppy and our 2 cats. She never cared for our Yorkie, but would always try to sneak into our backyard and take our little husky away. She's okay, by the way, and now she's a very big girl who's not so easily stolen. When my cat, his name is Church, named after the cat from the book Pet Sematary, all black, very fluffy, and the sweetest animal you'll ever meet, went missing for a few days one time. He came back home smelling exactly like her and looking very thin and roughed up. We kept him inside from then on. I have no idea how her sister turned out relatively normal. Sam wore fedoras, trench coats, and tried to buy katanas. She cosplays Naruto and gets angry when you want to talk about anything other than Naruto. She's crazy, so I don't interact. Three. The cast is me, a 19-year-old Hispanic short weep girl, who constantly and unintentionally grabbed the attention of any creep that walked into the store. Weasel, the most obnoxious, know-it-all, kinda sexist shift supervisor of my second shift. This guy loves to escalate situations if a man dares threaten his masculinity, and is absolutely terrible at confronting creeps, letting them walk all over him. Always talking about politics like he's on CNN. Dan, a super cool metalhead co-manager. He's in a band, has tattoos, and is overall a funny guy. Sandy, my sweet and amazing Marine General Manager, always has my back and hates creeps. A bit of background. I started working at this gas station as soon as I left the military, after being there only a few months due to a medical discharge. I wasn't injured, it was just a pre-existing condition. The gas station I worked at was downtown and crawling with crackheads, homeless people, and overall a lot of bad characters. My town is a quiet, peaceful retirement town for lots of older people. It was just that one area of the town that was pretty bad. I live in Florida, and where I worked was like the local hangout for any Florida man. I'm used to weirdos shitting in all kinds of places and creeps trying to get my number, but this one freaking neckbeard stuck with me. So my gas station is one of those big ones that have a kitchen and a froyo section with all kinds of up-to-date tech. Some days I worked in that kitchen and the main thing we sold were pizzas. Like, we had a whole pizza bar that looked like a pizza buffet, and some days I worked there for the eternity of my shift. And one of those days, I met Turtlebeard. So the way the kitchen was set up was that the pizza bar would be in front of me, a couple of feet away from the main entrance, and the pizza station and ovens would be behind me. So if I were to make a pizza, my back would be facing the main entrance, so at times, I wouldn't see who was coming into the store, and usually I would have my back turned for a good 5 minutes while preparing the pizza until it goes in the oven. These were frozen pieces, nothing fancy. So, like any day, I was making a pizza, and then I heard someone call me. I turn my back, and I see Turtlebeard staring at me with a weird smile. From the moment I saw Turtlebeard, I knew what I was getting myself into. He was a bigger guy around his late 20s with glasses, short curly blonde hair, and you guessed it correctly, a flippin' neckbeard in its true glory. However, this guy looked like he took care of himself and emitted no body odor. It was that, or I was just used to the body odor of the weirdos that came in every day. He typically wore some comic book graphic tee, jeans, and a jacket, and at the time, he carried a whole 2 liter of Mountain Dew to add further insult to his neckbeardiness. Now, the main reason I call him Turtlebeard is because I mostly remember him wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle t-shirt. And also the fact that he always came in to buy a whole pizza. Yeah, you could order a whole pizza at my gas station, and that's exactly what Turtlebeard came to do our first encounter. Being a good and nice employee, I put on my customer service facade, and asked how I could help him, and he told me he wanted me to make him a pizza, which I of course agreed to. Nothing weird. Though I couldn't help but notice his creepy smile the whole damn time. And as I made him his pizza, he stood there, and I could feel him staring all over me. It was so weird. Anyways, as I waited for the pizza to bake, he started asking me all the questions. My name, age, where I'm from, all that jazz. He even told me how he liked a good woman to make him a pizza. He was also standing right in front of the entryway to the kitchen, and not in front of the pizza bar like everyone else usually does. I started feeling pretty uncomfortable, and tried to communicate to Weasel, who was at the register, my discomfort. Him being the stupid dum-dum he is, didn't notice a thing. He was too busy striking up a political conversation with a customer, as always, which is very inappropriate in a work setting. I gave Turtlebeard his pizza, he paid, and as he left, this creep said, "See you later, baby." Oh, that was it. As soon as I got the chance, I told Weasel about the guy, and Weasel, being the prick he is, told me maybe he just wanted to strike a conversation, and that he didn't really say anything too weird. But he will tell him that he made me a little uncomfortable. Yet, knowing him, he will just give Turtlebeard a slap on the wrist, being the huge bitch he is. Seriously, he tries to talk to these creeps like he's fucking Ben Shapiro, and everyone knows he's a literal joke, so they ignore him. So the next day I told Dan about what happened with Turtlebeard and Weasel's response. Dan wasn't surprised at all, especially with Weasel. So he told me he would handle it since he recognized Turtlebeard, since he comes in some mornings. When Turtlebeard came in another day while I was at the register, I pointed him out to Dan, and he actually gave him a good talk about how he was making me uncomfortable. Turtlebeard said he wasn't and that he just wanted to talk to me. Yeah, okay, bud. For the most part after that, he quit saying weird things to me, but he still looked at me weird, and if he could get away with it, said a snarky remark calling me cutie or baby as he left. One morning while working with Sandy, I told her about Turtlebeard. Sandy immediately knew who I was talking about. She told me he came to her constantly asking for a job so he can, in his words, work with all the ladies." Sandy said he sure was a weird character, and after hearing about my encounter with him, she of course is not going to hire him. But she did say he has some mental disability that makes him act a certain way. In a way, I can sympathize with that. But I too have an uncle who has autism and is a fully grown adult who loves gaming, and he behaves accordingly. Having any kind of mental disability or disorder doesn't give you an excuse to act like a creep or a piece of garbage. I left the gas station after almost a year of working there, and have never seen Turtlebeard since. 4. Little bit of important background. My mother was born in Germany, but with Belgian nationality, as her father was a military man who got stationed at a Belgian base in Germany while her mother was pregnant, which is why my mother was born in Germany. She grew up on the military base going to a Dutch-speaking military school, but of course had to learn German as well because the people at the stores don't speak Dutch. When she was 16, she and her parents moved back to Belgium, as her father retired from the military, and my mother then started to go to a Belgian public high school. Due to how different the curriculum was from the military school compared to the public school, my mother had already learned things in her earlier years in high school, which her new classmates were only seeing for the first time now in the later years of high school. As a result, she would be labeled a nerd, which was not at all as popular as it is now, and was an outcast. The downside is that she attracted the unwanted attention of one particular teacher. This teacher is the neckbeard of the story. Although back then the term neckbeard or nice guy was not heard of yet, this teacher hit all the marks needed. The guy was a math teacher. He was not fat but lanky. He had a very poorly groomed beard, greasy hair, and BO that my mother described as could be used as tear gas and pepper spray in one. This teacher took a liking to my mother, a very concerning liking. Every time they were doing tests, had to work on equations on their own or anything like that. Normally a teacher would walk among the students, keeping an eye on who was cheating and things like that. This teacher liked to hover around close to where my mother would be sitting, his stank making it hard on her to concentrate on what she was doing. He would ignore other female students trying to give answers to questions in class. As he said, out loud, "You bimbos cannot know the answer. You're way too concerned about your ridiculous appearances, and way too busy flirting with the jocks." Yes, back then he was able to say things like that without any repercussions against him. Nowadays he would not dream to try it. But whenever my mother would raise her hand to answer, he would always pick her, and ask her to come write it on the blackboard too. My mother back then was a skinny young woman, but also an early bloomer, so by age 16, when this story happens, she had already developed full womanly curves. And you didn't need glasses to know where the creepy teacher was looking. This guy undressed her with his eyes every day, and there was nothing she could do about it, as there were no such rules or regulations yet that a teacher is not allowed to look in such ways. One day, the class found out when this teacher's birthday was, and collectively bought a big package of deodorants. However, no one dared give it to him. My mother took it upon herself to give him the pack of deodorant, in the hope that it would insult him and have him leave her alone. So she walked up to his desk, put down the package, and literally said, "This is from all of us. I really hope you know how to use it," as if to make it a little extra insulting. Now I hear you ask, did it insult him? No, it did not. After this, he ended up hanging around her even more, and regularly asking her, "Can you smell I am using it?" Eventually, this started to affect her grades. She didn't want to try anymore for his class. She didn't want to be there anymore and started failing math. He offered to tutor her after school, which she obviously declined. After bringing home a few failing grades, her mother finally sat her down to talk about it, and she snapped. Told her mother how creepy the teacher is and how uncomfortable he makes her feel, and how she went out of her way to try and insult him, but it didn't work. Despite no official rules or regulations existing back then that would have supported my mother, her mother is not one to mess with. The next day, a furious mother arrived at the school, unleashing her inner Karen, until she managed to get a hold of the school principal. She didn't demand the teacher fired or arrested. All she demanded was for her daughter, my mom, to no longer be put in his class ever again, which happened. Shortly after realizing that complaining does work, other students came forward with biased, discriminatory, and sexual ways the teacher behaved in class. Complaining about how his BO literally got some students to go home sick and more. The next school year, that teacher got replaced by another, and my mother hasn't seen him since. 5. So this happened about 4.5 years ago. At the time, I had been dating my boyfriend for 2 years. We gamed online with friend Stephen. We had large online gaming parties and would play PvP, PvE, or just joke around in any online RPG. I'm a very kind person, and for some reason, I'm the person people go to talk about their life's problems, and I will always listen to a friend in need. Stephen used to talk to me about a lot of stuff, and I mean a lot of stuff. He would talk for hours, and sometimes I would walk away from my headset saying, BRB, and come back to him still talking, like he didn't hear me just leave. He would also say stuff like, "You're the most prettiest, perfect person I've ever met." I would say thanks and brush it off. One time he was gaming with my boyfriend and our friend Dave and myself. We were playing Grand Theft Auto 5. I was in a battle with my boyfriend, he kept killing me, but then I caught him with an RPG to the face. He yelled, "You slut!" Now, before you make assumptions, in our alone time we do the dirty name-calling because we low-key are into kinky stuff. And we don't do this stuff in front of our friends, but that one slipped out. Anyway, after that, Stephen was convinced he was abusive and manipulating and didn't deserve me. From that day, he kept acting like a white knight, guarding me in games and defending me, and what he thought was bullying, when one of our friends would poke fun at my gaming skills. He was getting annoying. On Valentine's Day, my boyfriend and I spent the whole day, just him and me. It was what I would say, in the most girliest way possible, the most romantic and magical night possible. Feeling good after our night together, I got on my PS3. Stephen had messaged me, "I love you." WTF. That message made me feel sick. My friend Dave talked to me and told me about how Stephen was crying about my boyfriend being with me and how he didn't deserve me. Ugh. And then told Dave he messaged me, and Dave went off saying, "So you're gonna go behind someone you call a friend's back and hit on his girlfriend? You're a piece of shit." They had a long argument and then blocked each other on PlayStation Network. Finally, I went off on Stephen. This was our conversation. "I don't know why everyone's getting mad at me. I just spoke my mind. I love you. You're a perfect woman for me. You're kind, beautiful, you're a nerd. How can I not love you? I know you and him don't belong together, and I have a better connection. We belong together." I don't love you. I'm not attracted to you at all. You have nothing going for yourself. You live with your mother and have no intentions of leaving because you're afraid of living on your own and getting a job. His own words. And besides that, the only money you get is from babysitting, and you blow that all on PlayStation Network cards. You are almost 30 and I'm 20, and yet I'm more of an adult. I love my boyfriend unconditionally, and not you or anybody is going to change that. So shut the hell up and get out of my life. He started crying, told me I was a heartless person, and that was it. Never spoke to him since. My boyfriend and I are still together. We had gotten married and have an 11-month-old baby girl. I still love the heck out of him, and we still game together. We don't play in big parties like we used to, but we still have fun. Thank you for listening. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 51. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you have a Neckbeard story yourself you'd like to send in, or any other type of story, please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. Sorry, I got briefly distracted by the chat there as I was recording. They're being very naughty, mostly because I'm encouraging them to be naughty. But they're very, very naughty. But I do like them so. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up here for now. Got lots of editing to do, so I'm going to wrap things up here for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.